Ladies and gentlemen, I might sneak one of your ears while the other ear listens to the next, maybe to you. But a small lunch discussion. Thank you all for joining us over lunch and our final session. I hope you all had an enjoyable discussion at the round table session. I believe there was some good, robust discussions over the variety of 4 different conversations, which we look forward to listening to on audio tape and taking out some useful recommendations and points that we can include in our post-forum paper. For a small discussion here, we're going to tackle the future and the theme of, are millennials ready to take over the energy industry? Millennials, for those of you who don't even know the term, are generally defined as people born after 1980 and are now finding their way into managing and starting to take up leadership positions in the energy industry. So we're joined in that discussion by 2 different voices. One you might say is not a millennial and one maybe is a millennial. You may all know Dr. César Malavé, Dean and CEO of Texas A&M University at Qatar, and also Yousef El-Jaber, Deputy Director, Total Research Center at Qatar, and a recipient of an RxGTL Student Award for the advancement of postgraduate studies last year. So I'd like to thank them both for joining us. So Dr. César, before we get the view of the young gentleman, you are an educator, you are educating the next generation of millennials. Are they ready to take over the energy industry?
Oh, absolutely. So Millennium, like you say, these are students or professionals that are between the early 20s and early 40s. Right now. So you can say that last week the students that came out of Education City are probably the last batch of millenniums. They will 21, 22 years old, and I do believe that they're ready. These are students. Many reasons why I do believe that. These are students who have grown with technology. They feel comfortable with technology. These are students that have a tremendous sense of patriotism. This morning, somebody mentioned that these are students or professionals. I keep calling them students, professionals that believe that they can have an impact in the world. When you talk to them, these are professionals that they want to change the world and they believe that they can make a difference.
But how can you take over a very complicated technical industry with only 10 years, let's say, at the maximum of experience?
But these are students that have gone through an educational system that has given them opportunities that I didn't have when I studied engineering. Students have participated in internships, students have participated in study abroad, students that have traveled around the world. So I believe that they have gone through an educational system quite different from the one that I went through. That was basically an educational system based on math and science. These are students that they know how to work in teams. We have put them in teams from the time that they were freshmen in college. So I believe that they have the proper training and the proper attitude to take over the industry.
I'm going to use an old-fashioned way of canvassing the room, pre-millennial, by the show of hands. Who in the room, raise thy hand, thinks that millennials are ready to take over the management and leadership of the energy industry? By raise of hands, if you can, so that we can see what a general consensus. Not a lot of hands. Oh, thank you, Prime Minister. Are millennials ready? Nasser's uncertain. Are millennials ready to take over the leadership of the energy industry? Of course, yalla. Yousef, are you ready? Are you ready?
Thank you, Your Excellency. It's an honor to be here, and thank you again for the invitation. Thanks, Khalil, for the comment. Yes, I believe we see that the new generation today has reached to new horizon, and when it comes to education and in terms of readiness for work. Work ethics has changed and evolved within the years. The new generation has different work ethics from previous generations, but in a positive way, I would say. We see people are with the new generation are looking more for innovation and challenges, which is quite challenging also in the energy sector because it's a bit rigid sector, but that's why we see today a new energy, new forms of energy have been being discussed and looked at, such as solar, wind, hydro, wave, you name it. There are many.
But your generation is coming into position of leadership at a time when we're looking at a sort of a major transformation in the energy mix. We heard it discussed today. How long will that take is obviously up for debate. We're at a very significant sort of price point in the cycle. You know, there's a lot of challenges. I wonder where you can garner a confidence of experience in order to navigate through that period.
Yeah, this is an excellent question, because if we look at the sector of energy, it's a sector with long history and recording their progression from where they started, which was end of the 1800s or beginning of the 1900s. Up until today, we have a cumulative knowledge that reached up until today. So when we start, we don't start from scratch. When we come to the workplace, we don't go and start to work on the job from day one. We have the transition period, which is the training. Okay, some have argued it's too long, some have argued it's too short, but we have that transition period. So when you have, it's like a handover. It's not like the 400 sprint, I would say, when they have a fraction of a second to hand over. No, you have a handover period, you have a shadowing program, you have a development program, on-post or on-the-job training. These ideas and these concepts have came up in the past, I would say, decade to tackle this issue of handover from the older generation to the newer generation who will lead the future.
Dr. César, one of the reasons why we're facing this challenge at the moment, that the sort of baby boomer generation is handing over to the millennial, is because my generation, which is in between, we got squeezed out of the industry in the late 80s in a similar economic cycle like we're seeing now, where lots of layoffs happened, didn't attract as many people into the sector. What are you seeing at the coalface of education as to where young people are looking to go to? Where is the competition? How do we compete with Silicon Valley and the other options?
So when we talk to the students in that generation, you know, they want to make a difference. These are the students that, you know, when they graduated, they really, you sit down with them and they want to change the world. They believe they can make a difference. And I think that what the energy sector has to do is to make sure that they send that message clear to them, because I do believe that without a strong energy sector, you know, all the other things that they are interested in, Silicon Valley will not work. Okay, so it's very clear. So it's something that we have to make it clear to this generation, because they want to be in a place that has a dream. You know, they want to work. This is why Silicon Valley is so attractive to them, because they think they can create something that will change people's life. But if you look, what can change people's life most than a strong energy sector? So, but it's a matter of
how is that energy sector performing in your hallways, in your corridors, obviously within Texas A&M here in Qatar, but also back at College Station. Your university delivers one of the largest engineering faculties in the world. How is the energy sector performing in front of that body of children?
So the thing that we need to help them understand is that some of them, they are scared of the cycles of the energy sector. So this is the thing. They believe that when they get the college degree, they will not have a job. Okay? And we need to let them understand that how these cycles, work. But, if you go back 4 or 5 years ago, I was in College Station at that time. Every single young kid wanted to be a petroleum engineer. We just couldn't put all of them in the petroleum engineer program, and today they don't want to be in petroleum engineering. So it's because of the cycles of the industry. But on the other hand, chemical engineers do very well. So some of them, they don't understand that chemical engineers and electrical engineers and mechanical engineers, they also work in the energy sector. So it's just that they have this view that it's only petroleum engineers. So for us, they still continue to be a strong partners, the energy industry, and they continue to hire our students. But they see that myth, it goes up, and suddenly petroleum engineers were having 10 job offers, and making, what I used to believe that is, a horrendous amount of money just coming out of college. And now they see the cycle going down, and some of them, they do get scared about the cycles. But then when I talk to the people that have been in the industry for a long time, they remember those cycles as adjustments. And they remember how the industry was inefficient, and then the industry came back from the cycle stronger. So the ones who stay in the cycle, in the industry long enough, the cycle just make the industry stronger.
Yousef, in terms of the skill set that Dr. César mentioned earlier, that the compatibility, familiarity that your generation has with technology, with communications technology that is transforming and disrupting most energy sectors, is that not a slightly oversold competence, that it can really be the qualification to lead such a significantly technically complicated? Yes, you've had an iPhone since you were 5, but really is that a skill set that warrants boasting about?
I think I can answer that with one example from the industry. Today, the industry are adopting a new technology, which is using robotics. Basically, we mentioned it earlier, using robotics in the operation. And when you come and talk to someone who never held during their childhood, they never dealt with digitalization, they never dealt with these kind of devices, it's very difficult for them to accept the idea of controlling robots to go and check the offshore locations of our platform without going by themselves and inspecting it by their eyes. But this reduced the risk and reduced the cost even to go and check, because what you do, you send a drone that you control it from far away, and you check your facility just by having high definition cameras and different ways to inspect it. Now, take on the other hand, the new generation, my kids fly the drones at home. He has a plane and he will fly it, he will bring it. So now when he goes to work and one day he has to fly a drone at work, it's like childhood back again. Right. So it's a different perspective. The ecosystem has changed, the environment of work has changed, the challenges has changed. So we are not overselling the idea of a new generation is coming with a new set of skills. Some people see it that it is not important, but I believe it is important.
I suppose in some ways the toolbox that your generation and those coming after you will be using may be applicable to multiple sectors. The toolbox won't be that different, and so the crossover will be a lot easier than previous generations who were anchored with petroleum engineering skills, but that obviously couldn't apply. But when data science and robotics, it could apply to so many sectors.
This is amazing, because when we look at sector innovations, the IT, when they first started back in the end of 80s, beginning of the 90s, they were hiring people from other sectors to come and innovate in their sectors. Today, it's happening the opposite way, because you are looking into Silicon Valley for innovation, which used to draw people in for innovation. Now it's exporting innovation. So the idea is, yes, these there are some technical skills that you cannot really apply them directly. You have to adapt them. But on the other hand, there are also some soft skills that you can take them from one sector to another. For example, we also, I give another example in our sector, from the oil and gas perspective, we adopted something called TRL, Technology Readiness Level, which was developed in the space industry. So we look in the oil and gas for innovation from other sectors to bring in. And the way to do that is you need a new mindset, new people who have studied or have understanding and acceptability of these ideas. And when you bring a fresh mind to the business and a fresh eye to the business, it gives you a new way of doing things that could be a competitive advantage for you as a company versus others in the business.
Dr. César, is education keeping up with these changes? Are you as the sort of conveyor belt of future talent keeping up with his kids flying drones? Do you have a drone class at Texas A&M?
Okay, so the answer is that we are very slow in education. Very, very slow in listening to the industry needs. At Texas A&M, either in the main campus of here, we have a history of working with industry, especially with the energy sector, which, by the way, I might be a little bit biased because the dream of any Aggie engineer, any engineer graduated from Texas A&M in the main campus is to work with the energy sector. But that's because, we are in Texas. But we're slow. We are slow in making sure that we understand the needs of the people that we serve. But we're working on that. We have advisory boards. We have design projects. Our accreditation requires every student to engage in a capstone design. Many departments engage industry in the.
If you had total authority,
Yeah.
a president of Texas A&M on a grand scale and could decree the perfect program, what would that look like for what you think is the match and the need into the sector? How would you change that education?
Okay, I'll tell you what I will do, but one of the things that happen in academia is that you have faculty, okay? And even though I'm the dean, in academia versus industry, you have to run all these things by faculty committees and so on. But what I will do is that I will teach all the courses in a project-based format. That's what I will do. And all those projects will be sponsored by industry. And if you go to, you look to schools like Olin College, they have done that. So they don't have the traditional courses that we had when we went to school. Everything is taught in a project-based format, a project that can start in the freshman year and it can go all the way to the senior year. And then you add the different tools that you need as the complexity of the project, goes up with the years. And many schools are doing things like that. So we know that there are ways to educate engineers better than what we do now. We know that. The research is out there that says that there is a better way to educate engineers, and we're moving in that direction.
What about the question that we had earlier, Yousef, on the survey, which was asking that according to the Microsoft chief strategist, that you should abandon STEM and just focus on creativity because robots will do STEM. There was an overwhelming vote in the room against that idea, but I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I believe, as I said, any technology that you have to develop for your operation, you have to adopt it. So if we develop a technology that is applicable, for example, in our operation in Qatar, now we developed it, it's working very well. Now we need to take it and apply it in our operation, for example, in France, let's say. Let's assume we have
France?
Yes, let's assume we have a project there.
Yeah.
And it is similar given, but you need to adopt it. Now, can robots teach themselves to adapt themselves to this new technology, or can we use computer modeling to adapt it to the new technology? No, because you have stages in the technology innovation.
But you mentioned yourself earlier, artificial intelligence, that robot is going to get very smart very quick.
If we assume that it is working, because in a previous discussion in our breakout session, one of the participants have mentioned that robots, well, Dr. Mark Weichel actually, mentioned that robots don't have the ability to create. And I would like to quote him on that. Robots don't have the ability to create. And this is the human mind that creates. We design, we create, we make the new things, we innovate as a human. So we
But how
use
do you
robots
tell? I mean,
as
you said
tools.
it yourself earlier. Your kids are doing things that you never did. What are they going to kids do? This change isn't going to stop, right? This accelerated change.
Until we see some, I would say, decrease in this change or a slowdown in this change, then we can discuss it. But today, what we see today, it's expanding and it's exponential. It's increasing, it's doubling actually with time. The amount of information that we come across on a daily basis is just becoming way more than the time we have. We have 24 hours a day. We spend 8 hours at work, supposedly, 8 hours at home, and then 8 hours sleeping. What we are doing, we're spending 16 hours interacting with our phones, with our friends, with our social media, with the people, and then sleeping, maybe even deprived of sleeping. Now, today is a big issue, 5 or 6 hours, because people are becoming so engaged with life and with work that it's really difficult to make this distinguish. So it's increasing. It's not
Dr. César, how are you adapting to that, the point that I just made, the question regarding robots, artificial intelligence, STEM? How is that all fighting its way out in education?
Well, I have to tell you that I finished my PhD in 1987. And even though I'm a chemical engineer, I did my work in industrial engineering. And my dissertation was in the application of artificial intelligence to robotics. So and that was 30 years ago, and what I have seen in 30 years is not enough. So I think that new technologies like artificial intelligence and additive manufacturing, sometimes we have the tendency of overselling these technologies. So I believe that the human will be part of that, so I like to believe that it's more human-assisted, that more than what you see in movies and science fiction. So the human will always be needed in there. And the way that we adapt to that is in academia is that we bring that through either projects for the students. We like to bring that through internships that our students will go and work with these technologies in industry. Because another challenge that we have is that many times you in the industry have technologies more advanced than what we could afford in a university, and that's what we partner, with industry.
If anybody would like to make a comment or a question, just please put up your hands and we'll have a microphone come to the table just as we come sort of in towards our closing 5 or 10 minutes. So please continue.
No, I was going to say that, and then ultimately these things might end up in a course. But usually the way that new technologies get into education is through projects, through research. The research done by the faculty in the labs. In the last, I would say 20 years, you have seen a lot of that research being done with undergraduate students, which is something that I didn't have the opportunity of working on research while I was an undergraduate student. So usually that's the way that you bring the new technologies to the bachelor degrees through the research of the faculty.
Yousef, we were talking earlier in a few sessions regarding the challenge to NOCs going forward with the sort of the energy mix, the transformation. Is it a rising industry? Is it a declining industry? Coming back to the sort of original question of the session, millennials ready to take over. How do you overcome that challenge in a local sense, from a national sense, to this challenge with the industry? Are you a role model? How do you convince others that there is life still in this industry? Is the challenge still there?
This is a very difficult question, actually, Sean.
I mean, your generation has lots of choices. Not only does it have
That's very true, because today, if you talk about work options, my generation have a lot of options out of the oil and gas industry and out of the energy sector, because there are other sectors today that are paying very well compensation for not engineer, even non-engineer, to go and work with them. So it is very hard to convince someone to put the extra effort in terms of learning these skills and learning these and educating themselves even in higher studies in these fields. Even now, an engineer, the choice of engineers for higher studies could be an MBA more than
an MBA.
An MBA, Master of Business Administration, not.
Well, Dr. César, you've said to me before that you're already introducing at undergraduate level a diversified range of complementary subjects not outside of engineering.
How do we do it?
That you are already introducing that.
Sure.
Yousef is saying students are going into MBA programs. You're already channeling students away from core.
Sure. You know, we for also the engineers, we provide courses in business, and again, they can take business courses. Is one of the areas that I know that we're talking about the energy sector, but one of the hottest areas for engineers today is healthcare. That you will never imagine engineers having an impact in healthcare, and then you see universities combining, you know, College of Medicine. We're doing that in the main campus with the College of Engineering. So things that you used to see at the graduate level, now they are making it all the way to the undergraduate level. Now we have an issue with we having not enough credit to put all the knowledge that we like to put in an engineer curriculum, but you do it through other ways, you know, the extracurricular activities, you know, through undergraduate research, you know, with the students, co-ops, you know, internships with the students, or even student clubs or competition. Many of you support competition that the students learn skills, the skills of working together, the skills of leading teams, the skills of making presentations by participating in student activities.
Yousef, you mentioned there earlier the challenge and the opportunities. How do you look at your own career, just without sort of upsetting your boss if he's here, but a lot of the millennial generation see that they will have multiple careers, that they'll have multiple jobs, if you like. The sort of job for life is no longer part of your generation's consideration.
I wish, Sean, you were with us in the breakout session with Dr. Ibrahim, because we talked about that. Really, we tapped into that the new generation is looking for more liquidity, more cross-functionality, more moving from technical to non-technical sectors or departments within the company. They're fine to stay with the company for a longer period, but they would like to get this chance of experiencing more options. Now, today, with some of the older mentality, most of the NOCs in the region, you don't find this liquidity. If you start as an engineer, you should retire as an engineer. If you start as a finance person, you should retire as a finance person. Marketing, it's the same. So you take one path, it's linear, and it's very hard to progress. While some of the IOCs, and I am happy to be working in this environment, they give you the chance of moving. So I started as an engineer, then within the National Oil Company here, and then I moved to sustainability and to renewable energy even. Then when I joined the international company, I joined as head of CSR, which is something non-technical, which was something it raised a lot of question among my peers and my friends. After 3 years, I got the chance to become a deputy director of research, which is back to the technical side. So for me, this is a big chance to bring in new ideas. It is a positive impact on the operation. It brings in new ideas. It brings a fresh perspective within and innovation within the company and within the different departments. It's not like we need always to bring someone from outside the sector to innovate. The best innovator actually exists in the sector, and your best innovator actually exists in the company. So we should try to empower.
Well, that seems like a very positive place in which to conclude the voice of the next generation at the end of a forum of energy elders. Please join me in thanking our two speakers.